So I think I maybe have the coolest job on earth. My full-time job is turning on a camera, talking about watches, filming watches, just overthinking watches all the time. And this also means I'm hands-on with a lot of novelties, being emailed the newest drops, which is great. But I'm also in the midst of a change in taste, where I've been finding myself wanting older, vintage, neo-vintage pieces over new stuff. Here's why I think this is happening, and kind of just a love letter to older watches. Number one, character. And I think this is something watch collectors and watch enthusiasts will specifically understand. When an item has a soul, when it has something about it that's so much more than just the item, and it's been built to last. So these are the watches I've purchased the most recently, a few new, a few old, but let's talk about the old ones specifically. So a couple of TAG Heuer F1s. I actually bought this one for my husband and I to share, but it quickly became obvious we were going to fight over it, so I had to buy two. There are two Seamaster Diver 300s, both mid-size. And this was another one that I liked it so much that I bought it again. So I started with the reference 225250, loved it so much that I wanted the classic staple SMP and bought this. I won't drone on about how great of an era this was for Omega. I frankly do that too much already, but there's a really specific magic that is captured in these. When I first started getting into watches, I thought I would be a person who only wanted new watches. I wanted to put my own scratches on them, my own memories. But now I kind of like them coming preloaded. I like that they're telling a longer term story, and I've only just become a part of it. It's existed before me, and it will exist long after me. I think that's kind of beautiful. Now, if we look at the F1 specifically, oh my gosh, I love these. This was a nostalgic choice for me. And if you look at my Chrono 24 wish list, I still have more of these on there. There's a character and a joy to these. They feel like when brands used to just make stuff. Like, these don't feel like they went through rounds and rounds of market testing and strategic planning and all that stuff, focus groups. Even if we think of a brand like Jaeger-LeCoultre, JLC, there was a time where they used to make weirdo watches like this. Even Rolex, there is a faction of people who will say, Rolex isn't in the business of making watches, they're in the business of marketing. But they still had an era of figuring out branding and identity. These old bubblebacks are fantastic, and one of my favorites is the Space Dweller. It's hard to describe character, but when you have it in your hands, when you feel it on wrist, there's something really special. Number two, they're pieces of history, and I'm going to take you behind the scenes. You're going to get into the mind of a dum-dum, and you're going to see my Chrono 24 wish list. And I would say this is the major theme I see running through it is history. So we've got the Tudor Submariner, piece of history, Rolex 1655 Steve McQueen, history, Longines Chronos, IWC Da Vinci, Breguet Classique, Le Monnier Movement, all pieces of history. Even my more ridiculously priced stuff, a Brass Movement FP Journe produced in 2006. Yeah, that's history. That's the beginning of FP Journe. I think this history bit works in the micro and macro sense as well. Starting with the micro, so on a smaller level, it doesn't always have to be 4-digit Rolexes. I think one of the things that watch people love the most is that these little machines carry our history with them. The little marks and scratches, the watches we passed down one day, and the watches that were passed along to us. There are so few items that we buy for the long term. Like when you really think about what items you want to keep for life and will even outlive you and will be special to people after you. How many items is there? This is a fine and beautiful thing. This isn't a piece of costume jewelry. It's not a fashionable sweater that you'll like for a couple of seasons. But then we can zoom out to literal actual pieces of history. I'm thinking of the Blancpain 50 Fathoms, Rolex Submariner, Rolex Bubblebacks, Cartier Santos. The oldest watch I have is a vintage Omega Speedmaster. It is chock full of stories. I should actually make an entire video on this watch. Then, if we zoom out even further, we have 18th century pocket watches. The oldest surviving functional mechanical clock is in Salisbury Cathedral. It's an hour and a half away from where I live, dating back to approximately 1386. And sidebar, on a side note, fantastic cathedral. If you've never been, I highly recommend it. It's so huge. The spire is almost imposing on the skyline. If you're a church nerd, a clock nerd, it's a must visit. Let's not go down the church and cathedral recommendation rabbit trail. I can be down there for a while. What I'm trying to say is that if you're obsessed with timekeeping and watches in any way, you are participating in this thing humans have been doing even since before we had clocks. And I think that's pretty dang beautiful. That's awesome. There are some things that are classics for a reason. The Rolex Submariner, the Cartier Tank, the Omega Speedmaster. These aren't overhyped, boring watches. These are proven designs that have stood the test of time. They're timeless staples. People have been liking the Cartier Tank ever since the first time eyeballs looked at it. It is highly unlikely that the world is going to wake up tomorrow and think it's dumb. Whether it's a Santos from the 1990s or a modern one, it's going to look great. It's a proven design. The jury is in. The watch is great. Why not save a bit of money and get the older one? There is something interesting and something to say for the cool factor that old stuff has. Take the TAG Heuer Formula 1. TAG just re-released this model, 38 millimeters, technically great, but the old ones will always just be cooler. The Vacheron Constantin 222. Now, I'm not one to turn my nose up at the modern, but to see a vintage 222, way cooler. Seeing a Tudor Black Bay 58 or a Tudor Submariner, I don't even need to explain why the Tudor Sub is cooler. If you see someone wearing a modern Speedy, you'd probably say cool watch. And it is a cool watch. But if you see someone wearing a vintage Speedy, it is objectively just so much cooler. And I want to hear the entire story of that choice. So yeah, I mean, I think we can't ignore the financial aspect of this. I'm feeling a financial squeeze. I think that comes out in my content a lot as well. So I live in the UK. There is a cost of living crisis happening here. Things are just financially tighter for a lot of people, and I have less money to allot to watches. I've also recently made a very financially irresponsible decision in having a child who I love, and he's wonderful. He's just over a year and a half now. He's only going to get more expensive, and my finances have changed a lot since having him. In a lovely way. It's not a bad way. I just have to be less selfish, and that's a good thing. For me, it makes a lot more sense to buy the older version of the watches I already like rather than buying new. It's also just helpful that that was the direction my tastes were moving into anyways. I always tell people to look at the secondary market before buying. Most watches, 98% of watches, are more affordable buying secondary. There's the 2% outliers that we talk about a lot, very specific collectible Rolexes, quite specific Patek Philippe's like the Nautilus, Omega Snoopy's, very specific Longines, but a vast majority of watches are cheaper secondary. Even modern Pateks, most of the catalog is cheaper on Chrono24. If I'm being honest, vintage and neo-vintage watches are the things keeping me excited about this hobby and watch collecting, and the place where I'm finding the most zest. I'm a bit down about the watch industry at the moment. Watch prices have ballooned out of line with inflation. A lot of brands are chasing premiumization and positioning themselves as higher tier without offering a better product. I don't think much of their profits are getting reinvested into making better products. And I just think a lot of brands feel stale. I'm going to lay down. This feels like a therapy session. All right. It's a bit different. Let's do this. A neo-vintage and vintage kind of feels like when they were figuring it out. It wasn't about cohesive branding and focus groups. They were just making stuff. And in this time, a lot of cool and weird stuff was made because the stakes weren't as high as they are now. This was before conglomerates sunk their claws into storied maisons, some of the greatest names out there, some of the most storied historic names out there, and demanded profit and growth at all costs. JLC was making weird watches with no crowns. Rolex was making space dwellers for the Japanese domestic market. Patek's idea of branching out was a rubber strap, nautical inspired watch, but still very edgy for them. I don't know. For me, vintage and neo vintage is where the zest is. It's the area that's still keeping me excited about watchmaking. And it just represents this era that I love and I think is gone. Maybe I'm romanticizing it too much. But that's my love letter to vintage and neo vintage watches. I'd love to know in the comments what you think. What's keeping you interested in horology and watchmaking? Where is the zest for you? Let me know in the comments down below. Anyways, thank you so much for your viewership. I can't wait to see those comments down below. And thank you so much to the Pope tier patrons. Get their names on the screen. So you know how I started this video saying I think I have the best job in the world? I actually do. The fact that I'm just laying on my sofa talking about watches and that's what I'm doing today, awesome. And the whole reason I get to call this my job is because of you guys supporting my channel with your eyeballs and the people who are actually patrons and support it with their wallets. Thank you so, so much. You guys really make this so that it's a financially viable thing for me to do. Thank you so, so much. I hope you keep enjoying the content that we make here. Even if you don't, I hope you keep enjoying watches forever. Even if, you know, there's a time where you think this isn't a financially good choice for me to keep sponsoring Brittany's channel like this, but I love her content. That's fine. Dip in, dip out. Thank you so much for supporting. It really means a lot to me. Bye, guys.